Welcome to Pop Americana. My name is Ryan Ashley Wall. I am your host. I am joined tonight by, looks like a Nazgûl, but is in fact Byron Lafayette. Say hi, Byron.
Hey, how's it going? All very happy to be here discussing this monumental filmic achievement.
And we are also joined by Drew Tavares, who looks more like a dwarf in San Francisco.
And my gate.
My gate. That's great. Well, as you can tell, we're going to be talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and it is a fantastic film. However, if you haven't seen it, go watch it because this is 100% spoilerific. We are not holding back. We will be discussing theatrical content and possibly extended content if it naturally comes up. So if you haven't seen it, please go see it. I honestly don't know why you're watching this video if you haven't seen it, but it's a highly recommended film. Spoiler alert for this video, we all like it. So, and speaking of liking it, you can help Pop Americana out by liking and subscribing, sharing, clicking the notification bell, and of course, commenting. Now, commenting is important. Now, I know how this community is, and I just want you to know that I apologize in advance for the fact that this cannot be a completely exhaustive look at these beloved films. There's so much trivia. Yes, we know Viggo Mortensen broke his foot or broke his toe when he kicked the helmet in the Two Towers. We know a lot of these things. We can't possibly say it all. However, I know you're dying to type it into the comments. Fun fact, did you know? Fun fact, did you know? Please do so. Be a content creator alongside us and share with everyone the next mind-blowing fact. So please give us your favorite Lord of the Rings trivia. I know you have it. Now, before we get into this film, I would like to very briefly switch over to a recording I made to set the stage for exactly when this film came up in our context in the United States. The year is 2001, and the United States, indeed all the Western world, is still shaken by the September 11th terror attacks. A feeling of paranoia and suspicion has overcome us all, and this broken and frightened world is in much need of escape. Along comes Peter Jackson, a New Zealand film director, and his adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. At least, that's the popular narrative. Personally, I have always taken issue with The Lord of the Rings being considered escapism in the first place, but more on that some other time. The bigger issue with this framing, I think, is it misses the mark of what makes this trilogy so special. I don't think 9/11 or anything of that sort is required to truly appreciate and marvel at these cinematic masterpieces. A new generation is being captivated and won over by these films who either were not alive or old enough to have truly experienced 9/11 or the paranoia that ensued. Contrary to popular narrative surrounding these films, I do not think The Lord of the Rings is a timely masterpiece, but rather a timeless one, built on timeless themes, timeless archetypes, and timeless values. Such that were The Lord of the Rings to be released at any given point in cinematic history at the quality it was, it would have taken the world by storm all the same. As such, I think setting the stage for this story sort of misleads the analysis of what makes these films so special, even 20 years later. All right, now I saw this film back in 2001. It was December. I was at my grandmother's in Jacksonville, Florida for Christmas, and my cousin decided to take me to see a movie, and I had seen the commercials on children's television for action figures for Lord of the Rings, and I thought to myself, this looks like the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I was wrong. I was incredibly wrong. I was blown away. I have loved these films ever since. Before The Two Towers even hit, I had read all three of the books, read The Hobbit, and was well on my way to reading The Silmarillion. So I can't describe how cool it was to go in that December in 2001 into the theater, my cousin taking me to see a movie, and me thinking I was going to have a long, boring time, only to find out probably my favorite trilogy of all time was beginning in front of my eyes. In fact, not probably, it is my favorite trilogy of all time. But not everyone has seen this film in theaters as it happened. I happened to see it at the time, but others saw it afterwards. And one of them, for example, is you, Byron. You want to tell us about your first experience with this film?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting because I missed all three of these when they came out in theaters back in the early 2000s. And I was honestly kind of like, I was never a huge fantasy fan like growing up. I was always very into like, Asimov and hard sci-fi and stuff like that. And so I just kind of, probably the extent of my fantasy was like that I really enjoyed like Chronicles of Narnia and stuff like that. So I was like, I really liked that, but I just wasn't really into Lord of the Rings. And then just kind of as the years kind of went by, I just was like, hearing about like how cool they were. And I picked up the books and I read the books and I was like, hey, these are like pretty good, like, I really enjoyed the books a lot. And then finally it was just like years went by, and for some reason I just never saw the movies. I don't know why. It wasn't like I was avoiding them or anything, but it was just I just never did. And it was fine. It was finally over when The Hobbit came out that I was like, I'm gonna go see The Hobbit in theaters. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I saw all three of them in the cinema, and I adored them. And then I was like, okay, I need to see The Lord of the Rings now. Fast forward a few years, like I still never got around to it. And like everyone I knew was giving me like crap over like, why haven't you seen it? Well, then finally COVID hit and I had so much time on my hands. I was like, and finally I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna watch Lord of the Rings. And I popped in the Fellowship of the Ring and I was like, dear God, why did I wait so long? Yeah, I was like, this movie, it was just every expectation that I had was exceeded. It was just incredible. The three, and I did see the theatrical was what I saw first, but just like the whole 3 hours just flew by. Like I couldn't believe it was over, and I couldn't wait to go into like the Two Towers. So it was magnificent. And I would echo with you, Ryan, that I think it probably is my favorite trilogy of all time. Now that I've seen them. But I would say real quick that I would say though that I do think Fellowship of the Ring is my favorite of the three. And we'll get into all those reasons later. But yeah, it's an amazing film. This first one, especially.
Yeah. Drew, what is your first experience with this film?
Yeah, so I was just a wee lad whenever it first came out. And I did see it in theaters, but like I was super small, so I don't really remember the like theatrical experience. Um, but yeah, like I saw all three of them in theaters, and as soon as they came out on like VHS and DVD, you already know we got those. So yeah, like I just grew up like rewatching them all the time with my family, like especially like in the winter when it was really cold, when we couldn't really do much, we would just like watch a bunch of movies and stuff. So yeah, like, I grew up with these films, and just absolutely like loved them. Even like I want to say I was like 6 or 7 years old. We had like for one of my birthdays, we had a like Lord of the Rings themed birthday. My mom made us like made me and all my friends like Hobbit cakes and stuff like that. It was super awesome. We all had like replica like toy stings, like the sword.
Nice.
So yeah, like I just grew up absolutely loving these films. And just like Byron, I wasn't really into fantasy a lot. I was much more into sci-fi, but both Lord of the Rings and Narnia were like a huge part of my childhood.
Yeah, I think these films made me a bit of a fantasy snob, where it's like after this, what measures up, really?
Yeah, true.
It's such a high bar of quality, and I think we'll be spending a lot of time talking about that probably. Spoiler alert, we all really, really like this film. So if you're looking for the most scathing takes, you're probably not getting them here. I'm gonna be honest, they're hard to come by anyway. So at least from as far as a content creation standpoint, and I think it's maybe a bit bold for us to make this our maiden voyage film, so to speak. But my other pick was Titanic, and that is not a good maiden voyage. So,
Oh.
so yeah, let's not sink the ship. All right, we're just going to get straight into our review and analysis in the film. Now, I will also say that while we're talking about this, we're not going to be making an effort to talk about the books or compare anything with the books. And yeah, we know, or at least I do, I know the source material incredibly well, but we're just talking about the films as they appear. And like I said, all the extended content is allowed in this discussion, although it may or may not come up, just kind of depends. So let's start with, of course, the beginning. This movie opens up with a prologue, unlike any other I think I've ever seen, and it can be risky to open a movie with an exposition dump of all things. But honestly, this may be my favorite prologue of any movie.
I really liked it. It was interesting because, like you said, it was risky because, especially that you have like, I want to say it's like what, like 60 seconds of dialogue with like no picture, or it's just like, it's just black, so it's like, it's very, it was different. But I liked that it almost had like a dream-like quality almost, because it looks different than the rest of the movie. Like it doesn't look the same. And I really liked that. And it was funny. Like I actually rewatched the prologue before we did this, and there was one aspect when you mentioned the scathing, and this isn't scathing, but it was just something I laughed at when I saw it, that like the one criticism probably for the whole movie that I could give is that for some reason like Sauron's robes look super cheap, and it's like when they're fluttering, it was like I was like, whoa, something went wrong here, because it was like they're like so thin, and that was the only thing that I was laughing at when I watched it. I was like, but even then it's over in like 5 seconds, and then you're back to just the epicness. But before I hand it over to
score.
Oh, the score and the CGI, like I was amazed at the CGI for the time. Like, even though like they hid a little bit of it in like, kind of the dark colors, it still, it holds up so well. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't feel like I'm watching like a PS2 video game, like at all.
No Matrix Reloaded here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Kate Blanchett is just like nailing the narration here. Like I don't know that she's ever given a better voice performance than this, and it's just captivating from start to finish. And it's funny because they almost didn't open this film with a prologue, which is wild to me because seeing it's like obviously the right move. If you listen to the soundtrack that they sold with this, it opens different, and the tone is completely different. It's off. I way prefer what they did in the film itself. I recommend check it out. It's pretty interesting. Drew, you haven't given your thoughts on the prologue other than a couple nods and yeses.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually was rewatching the extended cut today. I didn't get to finish it because I only saw the new Jackass. But yeah, I hadn't seen the extended. I've only seen the extended cuts once, and it was when I was like 8 years old. Don't really remember them that much. And right away, there's already like differences between the theatrical and the extended cut in the prologue. But yeah, the prologue just sets the tone. It sets the stage of the Lord of the Rings like perfectly. Like immediately you're introduced into the world. You already know like kind of what the stakes are. And like, yeah, it just like Byron was saying, the CGI holds up incredibly well, which is insane because it came out like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So the fact that it still holds up is crazy because there's films that even come out today with similar budget sizes and they don't look nearly as good.
Yeah.
So yeah, like just the work that they did for the time it came out is incredible. And yeah, like I love the whole like battle of Mordor that they have at the opening. And the way that transitions into what we get with the Shire is just like a complete like contrast. And like you go from like this very like kind of desolate land to something very like beautiful and like peaceful.
Yeah, and also from like the highest of high fantasy to, you know, kings and elves and sorcerers down to farmers.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah, you're right. It is a smooth segue there, by the way, I may say. But we should kind of move on. I think we are universally agreed that the prologue is excellent. It sets the stage well. It condenses like thousands of years of history into, you know, an understandable segment. You know, and of course it follows the ring the whole time, so which was a smart move because that's really the thing we need to be focusing on in the prologue. And it ends with that, you know, hobbits may a time will come where the hobbits will save the fortunes of all. And you know, like we open with the Shire and it's gorgeous, and depending on which cut you're watching, the intro into the Shire is different, where in the I can hardly remember the theatrical anymore because I've been watching the extended for so many years. But we have Bilbo narrating about what hobbits are, which is kind of important because I think, you know, we breeze through in the prologue men, elves, dwarves, but everybody kind of knows in the collective consciousness what an elf and a dwarf is. You know, hobbits you do need to spend a little time on because they are a very Tolkien unique thing.
Yeah.
And it we spend a lot of time in the beginning of this movie in the Shire, and if you're watching it in the moment it may feel like we are wasting time, but every minute we're spending here is paid dividends the longer we go on. Because I feel like when you know the Shire, when you know what hobbits are, when you know what our characters are leaving behind, like it really, you feel the stakes, you know, like it's not all just the highest of the high. You know, there's a home that they're fighting for that I think it's important to establish here. And Gandalf and Frodo meeting is just delightful. What do you guys think?
Oh, you go ahead, Drew.
All right, yeah. Sorry, we're talking about the Gandalf meeting. Okay. Yeah, so I mean the segment where Frodo meets Gandalf for the first time on screen, it's kind of cemented to me as a meme now because there's the whole meme where it's like the wizard is never late, he arrives precisely when he means to, and then also when Frodo's like, you're late. So that's kind of like burned into my mind now, just like the same way that the Star Wars prequels are just a bunch of memes now. But yeah, like so when I was rewatching it this morning, it just I couldn't help but laugh. But no, yeah, the interaction that they have is perfect because you immediately get a sense of like, oh, they know each other. They've known each other for a long time, and it's been a while since Frodo's seen Gandalf. Which like that's something that like happens throughout all of these films a lot, is the character work is insane for how many characters are on screen all the time. Like it is a massive ensemble cast. Honestly, like I'd say bigger than Avengers Endgame level of ensemble cast. And just the interactions, like those very like small personal interactions, work perfectly into this very grand scale kind of story of them traveling with this ring. So yeah, like I said before, like the prologue, like the intro and everything, it's just like kind of the perfect calm before the storm that we see later on in the film.
Yeah, and that aspect of implied history is excellent, because we're going to see it again in just a few minutes. But Byron, what do you think going into the Shire? Frodo meeting Gandalf on the way to Bag End?
Yeah, it's one thing that I really liked, and just what struck me is I just love how idyllic it is. It's just it's beautiful. So many movies focus so much on the characters or the dialogue or whatever, that sometimes the window dressing, so to speak, can be a little bit off, or just a little bit less. It's the whole classic, like, oh, final fight of an action movie is in a dingy warehouse, and I'm always like, why don't we create a better background for this? It's like, well, it's the same with this, that it's like, this could have been just a very bland background for these characters meeting, but Peter Jackson just created this gorgeous environment, that's like, I was like, oh man, I want to go to the Shire, because it's just, the ponds, the gardens, just everything. It's just like, it's the kind of, area that everyone would like to live in, and because like cool and stuff.
Which is why it is a vacation destination now.
Yeah, I actually looked it up, and I was like, man, I'd love to go, because it's awesome. But the other thing I liked too with the meeting is that, Gandalf is this, this hugely powerful being. It's like, we later find out, he's basically like an archangel, basically. But it's like, when we first meet him, he's just kind of like this strange old man, basically. It's like, oh yeah, he comes in with his fireworks, and it's just like, he's just kind of this odd dude. And I liked that. I liked that it kind of took this character, he's this archetypal, wizard, basically, but just brought him down. He's joking, he's laughing, he's very, you can relate to him very much, and I always liked that.
Yeah, he's not above it all. He's a man of the people, so to speak. Yeah, and that sense of implied history does carry over into meeting Bilbo, which now, with Ian Holm being gone now, is kind of a choke up moment for me. Like this, and when he appears later in Rivendell, and then in Return of the King, it absolutely kills me now when he says, I think it's time. I think I'm quite ready for another adventure. I'm like, oh my gosh, like we've lost a talent here. We've lost a few talents in this film, but I just wanted to draw attention. 20 years ago, we had this performance, and now we no longer have this actor. So I did want to just highlight that for a moment. But my goodness, Ian Holm and Ian McKellen have like all the chemistry in the world, despite like the work it took to make it appear that Ian McKellen was so much bigger than Ian Holm, and like it's crazy what they did to accomplish all that. But even through all of that movie magic nonsense, they managed to appear as exactly as they are, two veteran actors just acting their dramatic crap out of these scenes. And I just love the dynamic between Gandalf and Bilbo. You can feel that they've been friends for a long time. You can feel that they trust each other. You can feel that they're at ease around each other. And Bilbo wants to impress Gandalf, wants to accommodate Gandalf. And, they love each other in a great, wholesome way.
I agree 100% with you that you do feel that history between them, that it's like, at this time, obviously the Hobbit trilogy hadn't been made yet, but you still felt like all of that had happened before, that it wasn't hard to imagine, oh, they had this adventure years before together, and the, like you said, the chemistry of the two actors together just reinforced that so much, that it was, it didn't feel like two actors just acting. It felt like two friends, meeting up again. And I just think that's a testament just to Peter Jackson, of the way he helped write it and direct it and stuff, that you felt the history of an event that had not happened. It's like, it was incredible. But but yeah, I loved their interactions together, and Ian Holm he was amazing. You know, just iconic in that role.
Yeah, and it's not a big role in this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rather small. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, we'll get to it years later, but I mean, we'll get to it next year, but it's pretty amazing that that you know that it was big shoes to fill when the Hobbit movies came around. You know, and I think the shoes were actually filled, but it was you know, I remember thinking, man, how are they gonna, how are they gonna do it? You know, because everybody I'd known had always told me they're like, I don't know how this is gonna work out. You know, Home was so amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna mention real quick. Again, like so, just like how Gandalf meets up with Frodo. Whenever we meet up with Bilbo, just something that like happens throughout these films, even though they're incredibly dark, deep, and intense stories. There's always this like a sense of humor like layered throughout. And whenever Gandalf is in the the Hobbit holes, is that what they're called? I can remember.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, whenever he like walks in there, he like bumps his head on the ceiling, and there's just like little moments like that that just always bring a smile to my face.
It's the chandelier and then turn around and hits the
Yeah.
ceiling.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, that and like Bilbo like running around the Hobbit hole, taking his staff and putting it up and talking about popping out
Yeah.
some old wine, and it's you're right. There we can't miss the fact that there's a ton of humor interlaced through this, and it doesn't feel forced or like referential. It just feels like natural humor that would occur in the world, you know, which is a rarity these days, you know.
Yeah.
I do have to ask real quick, since Drew mentioned the Hobbit holes. Did any of you guys ever have the Denny's Hobbit themed breakfasts that they did when the movies came out? I think they had the Hobbit hole breakfast.
I did not know that was a thing, but that sounds horrifyingly difficult to
it was horrifying. Yeah, it was years ago at my church. There was this girl who I was kind of interested in, and she was like a waitress at like Denny's, and she would like come in, and she'd like sometimes have her name tag on, and she would always complain about the Hobbit times over those 3 years. Like, oh, it's Hobbit season again.
We've had one, yes. What about second Hobbit season?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Anyway, we have Bilbo's birthday party happens, and which could just be frivolous, except we also use it to introduce Merry and Pippin with their shenanigans with the firework, which immediately sets them as comic relief, and we also use it to further Bilbo's character and introduce how the ring interacts with mortal people. So even though it seems like this is an entirely superfluous scene, it's actually doing a lot right out the gate, you know. And I love Merry and Pippin's introduction. And like I said, it just sets the tone immediately for them that we can expect that these will be the characters we follow who are not self-serious, and though they will have their moments later, we immediately establish these as the troubled young hobbits. And the dragon firework is a fantastic effect. I love all the fireworks really, but the dragon is just top-notch stuff.
And it's also like a nice kind of reference back to the Hobbit story with like Smaug and everything. Like I'm sure like Bilbo had some PTSD with that one.
It's
that
kind
just
of a
makes me
poor
love
taste
Gandalf
firework
even
now that
more.
I think about it.
Yeah, if I'm gonna bring a firework that represents when he was trapped in a cave with a flesh-eating dragon.
Bilbo's not even bothered by that. In fact, he's just clapping. He's like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah. But deep down inside, he was freaking out.
Yeah.
I think it's. I will note here because it is in the context of a wider film trilogy, at least, it is neat to see that Bilbo has gone from being, the perfect ideal neighbor hobbit to his chill is completely gone. Like, I've had to talk to dragons. I have no time for your nonsense.
Yeah.
Kind of. And his speech, like, I use I like less than half of you half as well as I should like. No, I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve.
Yeah.
That's the best backhanded comment ever put to film. And of course, Tolkien wrote it, but gosh, the delivery is perfect.
It does. It just is such it's just a further testament to Ian, that he, that line could have just been a throwaway line in it, but he delivered it in such a way that it was instantly iconic.
And the way the hobbits look, like they're,
Yeah.
I told myself I wouldn't do this, but there's a line in the book that says that like there was some scattered applause, but
Mhm.
also many were just trying to figure out if it worked out to a compliment. But you can see that on the faces of some of the hobbits where they're just like, was that good? And then of course he vanishes, which is not, I think it's intentionally not much of an effect. It's just he's there and then he's not. And yeah, he goes away up the hill while the hobbits panic, and we're back in Bag End with Gandalf, and we have this scene where I think we are introduced to the main but understated threat of this entire saga, which is the seduction of the ring. Because at this point, Bilbo's been holding on to it for 60 years, I think. And he's having serious trouble letting go of it. And again, the performances, the chemistry between Gandalf and Ian Holm are perfect. The "My precious" line delivered from Bilbo is like, I know they filmed all three of these films at once, and we don't see much of Gollum in this, but it feels to me like Ian Holm based his "My Precious" on Andy Serkis's "My Precious," and like, it's just bone chilling, like, it's good stuff.
It was just I liked that it showed the seductive but corrupting power of evil, that because obviously Bilbo, he's a good guy, he's one of the best guys, but you see that that even he's not immune from this, and it just furthers that moral lesson, basically, that if you're around evil for too long, or you associate yourself with it, it's going to affect you at some point. You may not want it to, you may not intend it to, but it's going to happen. And I just liked that, with Bilbo, that you saw that, that it was time to let go of it, and it had a hold on him, I can't remember. I think, isn't it that scene where like his face changes, I think?
No, that's later in Rivendell, but that's
okay.
But yes, you're on the right track.
Yeah, that it's it's just that corrupting power. It's the same old adage, that if you have a bad apple, it corrupts everything else, and I think it's also interesting because it kind of showcases, because it lays the foundation for for our later the later journey throughout these films, because the whole point of the ring is that it does corrupt, and so seeing its effect on somebody kind of ups the stakes, I think. When it comes to
for
the other. Yes.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add there is the effect when the ring drops and it sounds like it's 40 pounds. And it doesn't, like, you ever drop something small like that, it never just lands and stays. It like tumbles and goes 20 miles away. But here it just thunks and it stays because it looks, feels, and sounds incredibly heavy, which is a constant theme with this thing that I genuinely appreciate. And I think they accomplished that shot with a forced perspective and a really big ring. So it's like, it actually was a really big heavy object on the ground. But yeah, that's one moment that stuck out to me. Even the first time seeing it when I was much younger is like, oh, that sounded heavy, you know. And of course we have Frodo showing up and Bilbo's already gone, which is a touching little scene where he decides to leave and is free of the ring, you know, which is good news for him, bad news for everyone else. But he's old enough to where that should be the case. But yeah, we have Frodo and Gandalf with the ring, and Gandalf is totally freaked out by what he saw Bilbo go through and leaves Frodo to go investigate, and we have life in the Shire continue on, and he comes back. And at this point I think at this point we have seen the Nazgûl introduced, except we don't have any context for what they even are at the moment. And they're just terrifying horsemen clad in black, no face visible, and they're interrogating hobbits and cutting their heads off, and they're just I can't stress enough how fantastic a job they did on the Nazgûl, and not, I mean, just the series altogether, but I think in particular, like, to me, they're more frightening on horseback. I guess it's because they're on your level, you know, and once you get to the fell beast, it's just kind of like, well, that's the scary thing, you know. But the Nazgûl, like, on the ground, it's like I would almost rather be attacked by the giant featherless bird of death, you know. Yeah, the Nazgûl are hunting Frodo. That there's no encounter between them yet, but that's something that's out there. And Gandalf comes back and confirms that this is the ring we were hearing about in the prologue, and it's terrible, and it can't stay here because the enemy knows. So, and of course, in all that, we are introduced to Sam, who is in the extended edition. Well, I mean, he's sort of been introduced in the pub scene earlier, but this is our first real major contact with Sam. Oh, he was at the party as well. But rather than just being a shy, timid hobbit, we get the feeling that he is Frodo's gardener, his servant, longtime friend, and is shanghaied onto this adventure due to eavesdropping. So let this be a lesson, kids. If you don't want to walk to Mordor, mind your own business. So
it's kind of funny because oh no, go ahead, Drew.
I was just gonna say, like, Sam is like, I've grown to love his character more and more as I've gotten older, because I like kind of understood his character a lot more. But yeah, Sean Astin, just I could not imagine anyone else playing that role. He does it so perfectly. You know, you kind of like feel like he's in a way they almost like make it feel like he's kind of like almost wimpy in some ways, and like not very like adventurous and stuff like that. But like as you get to know him more, like he has so much incredible growth, and like just right away, like you already like love the character. And like when I was watching the extended cut this morning during the pub scene, there's the whole sequence where you see his love interest later on in Return of the King, and just that whole like interaction that he has, like you can tell he like really likes her, but like he doesn't really have the guts to like go up and like talk to her and all that stuff. And he got a little bit jealous when the one guy was like trying to flirt with her and everything.
The incredibly drunk hobbit that was.
Yeah. And then Frodo was like, like she doesn't notice idiots or something like that. I can't remember what he said specifically, but man, it's so good.
It was she knows an idiot when she sees one, and then Sam's like, does she? And like you can't tell if he's worried that he's an idiot or
no, yeah, exactly. And like just that kind of like body language that he has in that scene, like that's what makes him like such a great character. Or like Sean Astin's performance so good is like just those like interactions like that, like there's just these subtle like body movements that he does to where like for that scene you're like, oh yeah, like he doesn't know if like Frodo's talking about him or not. So
yeah. Oh, gosh, Sam is the best of us.
Yeah.
So Byron, any more to add on Sam, or are we just gonna head out of the Shire here?
Oh no, I think you guys covered it pretty much. I will say the one thing that is kind of funny that I always think of is the one scene where where he's leaving, and he says, one more step and it will be the farthest I've ever been from home. Well, I always laugh at that scene now because somebody on YouTube compiled the cut where it's 10 hours of him taking a step and saying it every single time. And so like whenever I see that now, I always think of that 10-hour super cut.
It's like, such a cursed video.
It is so bad. And the comments are even better because we were like, man, it starts dragging at hour 5, but man, at hour 7 it picks up.
Yeah. You're just begging for the scene where Sam's not there.
Yeah.
That's a very funny cultural moment. We'll come to many of those. Like there's one mega important one in the Two Towers. Sure, we'll get to, but perfect segue because now our hobbits have left the Shire, making for the village of Bree at Gandalf's instructions, and meanwhile Gandalf decides to go see Saruman, played by the late Christopher Lee, who is also no longer with us and also a generational talent that we have lost. So rest in peace, Sir Christopher Lee. But his Saruman is like, we all talk about Gandalf, and Gandalf is great, but I think Christopher Lee's Saruman is every bit the equal. It's just he has the misfortune of playing the guy nobody likes. So, I love his dictation as Saruman. You believe him as Saruman. He is a jerk of excellence, and like. The one thing I know, even when I was much younger, watching this movie, I was thinking, oh my goodness, how do you not know this guy's gonna betray you? Like I met this guy for 20 seconds and I'm like, oh yeah, this is evil wizard. But I mean, that's what happens when you hire Christopher Lee to do a job, but but my goodness, that voice is that there's no other voice like it. And you have Saruman's betrayal, and he's kind of setting up another theme that we're going to see throughout all three of these films, which is kind of nihilistic hopelessness, which is, I've looked at the situation, we're not going to win. And his response to that is, may as well join the winning side. So which that's a perspective, I guess. But we have Saruman betraying Gandalf, locking him on top of Orthanc. Although in this scene you wouldn't know it, you would think that Gandalf is now just a squishy chandelier, which is it brings us to our first action piece before or since the prologue, which is a wizard battle. A very odd wizard battle. It's reminiscent to me of like using force pushes and then also breakdancing. So, but what do we think of Saruman and Gandalf's meeting here?
As you said, just Sir Christopher Lee is he just oozes talent, in everything, and I was so happy that he got cast to be in this iconic role. And it was definitely like, I loved the interaction between them because they had great chemistry, and kind of before, like you said, with with Gandalf and Bilbo, how you sensed a history, you also had that with Saruman and Gandalf. You sense that they had been companions, fighting alongside each other for eons. But I liked that when we first kind of meet him, like, he obviously takes on a more sinister guise later on, as we continue to go, but like, kind of in the beginning, it's almost kind of the banality of evil, basically, that he's like I don't want to be evil, but it's like, man, well, yeah, I might as well. It's like, I'm gonna survive, so I might as well be evil. I might as well be Sauron's middle management. It's like and
He's
and it's
someone's middle management anyway, so
yeah. And also, what I love about the scene too is kind of what Drew mentioned earlier. It's like, there's so many memes in this scene,
yes.
that I have seen it. Oh, and it's just like, it's so memeable.
So you've chosen death.
Yeah, you've chosen death. And it's just like, there's so many great ones, but yeah, it's like the action part of it is not the best. I mean, it's not amazing, like, oh wow, but it works. And it kind of, I appreciated that Peter Jackson kind of went in a different way, that it wasn't just like, ooh,
fireballs. It could have just been fireballs.
Yeah, lightning, fireballs, that they, that it kind of showcased a little bit of different types of power. I don't know. So I thought it was, it was fine for what it was, but it was kind of funny when he helicopters Gandalf up into the ceiling. It was just funny.
Oh man.
Helicopters.
Yeah, y'all pretty much covered everything that I was gonna say about that whole sequence. I'll just also add, I love Christopher Lee as Saruman. Just, he has so much prowess, and he's super menacing with his voice, and even his appearance. I always think of the one scene with the crystal ball thing, and he has his hand over it, and just, he looks evil. You just immediately know, all right, this guy's a bad guy. And he's fantastic.
He's every angry wizard you've ever seen on one of those 90s 3D puzzles.
Yeah.
In the best way possible.
Yeah. This is so true.
The only thing missing is the poster next to him with the wolves on the moon.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, jokes aside, our hobbits make their way to Bree, but not without being chased by the Black Riders. My goodness, the scene under the stump, of course, Frodo and Sam run into Merry and Pippin, reintroducing them into this, letting us know that these guys are going to be with us. They're not just an off-shot character. But that encounter where they hide under the tree from the Nazgûl is, oh my gosh, the when he starts sniffing and the insects come out and the spiders are crawling across him, I'm like, yeah, you would have caught me.
that scene gave me nightmares as a kid, because I've always had a huge fear of bugs, and that scene just messed with me as a kid. Honestly, traumatized me. But yeah, it's so good, and it kind of shows some of Peter Jackson's horror roots, because if you didn't know, he one of his first films was kind of a slaughterhouse slasher kind of film, and so he kind of brings those elements of his roots into the film with the Nazgûl.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And when I was I had trouble interpreting the thing about the bugs. When I was younger, I thought, oh, evil thing attracts evil things. And I was like, is that it? Or is it these things are so terrifying, even though the wildlife is just trying to get away? It's nah. Even the bugs are like, nope.
I'm head out.
I didn't sign up for this. But yeah, oh my goodness, like I can't believe we haven't mentioned this. When you talk about Nazgûl and Lord of the Rings, you have that scream is awesome. It's one of my favorite sound effects in a film ever. It's right up there with the lightsaber. It's just like, ooh, it's so good. And
it's very iconic. It's easily recognizable. Like if I was just out in public and I randomly heard that, I'm like, well, I know what that is.
The funny thing is, I believe, and fact check me if I'm wrong, fans, because you know this. That is the scream comes from Peter Jackson's wife, Fran Walsh.
Oh, interesting.
Really?
Yeah, like they doctored it a little, of course, but there is footage of her, like her scream over the Weathertop sequence, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that is a human being making that noise. It's crazy. That sound effect is just phenomenal. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
So tempted now to put that as my ringtone for a phone and then go out somewhere.
Oh man, make that your alarm for when you wake up.
Yeah.
That'll get you moving. I pulled up the sound clip one time walking through the woods with Rachel, my wife, and it just kind of froze there for a second.
Oh man.
Okay. Oh, that's hilarious.
Were there divorce papers the next day? No.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no. but she's my wife, so she's seen these movies a million times too. So it wasn't too bad, actually. I think other than that, we have a few scenes of the Nazgûl chasing the hobbits. We have the thing with the fairy. All of that is in the same vein as Drew was talking about with Peter Jackson's horror chops coming to fruition there. I love the shot of the Nazgûl in the mist kind of on top of the hill. Mm-hmm. That's another iconic image we see in this. And just moving along in the plot here, the hobbits make their way to Bree, where they meet the gate man, who's kind of a jerk to them, but is a jerk to them because it's his job to be a jerk to them. And they go into this town of men, and I love the effects they use to make this place look huge to these hobbits. Just like on the street level, it's like, in Hobbiton you saw all these in the ground holes and stuff, and in Bree it's multi-story buildings, and they there's like a perspective on the camera that just makes them look huge, and we have our Peter Jackson cameo in this scene too, where he's eating a carrot, which is just a weird thing for a man to be doing in the rain in the middle of the night. I prefer my carrots soggy. I don't know about y'all. So.
Oh, yeah.
Prancing Pony is, of course, the bar or inn that Gandalf had arranged to meet them at. And of course, they find out Gandalf is not there. And they decide to just pop in, take a drink, and there seems to be a stalker. Viggo Mortensen in a hood with a pipe. Say again, Byron?
I said he just strides in,
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine if his nickname had been Stalker instead. But anyway, jokes aside, we have Viggo Mortensen's Strider introduced here, and yeah, man, this is good stuff. But before we get too far into Viggo Mortensen, I think we should get to Frodo's trying to prevent Pippin from spilling the beans on who they are, and slips and falls, and the ring falls on his finger in a really cool shot. I love that shot. But then we see like this crazy windswept, distorted world of what it looks like when you have the ring on. And of course we have that famous, ever so memeable ICU, Eye of Sauron moment. And that's just a very striking image, very very much in line with that, again, that horror roots of Peter Jackson, who those roots serve him well with the bad guys in this series.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like just it's honestly like terrifying, and it like freaked me out as a kid all the time. Um, I like honestly, I'm surprised I even love these movies as a kid. But yeah, it's man, it's so another one of those things where it's just like super iconic. It's very unique to Lord of the Rings. I've never really like seen anything like it before. And like especially some of like the imagery that's like behind it and stuff. And there's more moments of this stuff that we'll get to later on in the film, where we see the ring perspective. But yeah, it's just such a, again, like a huge contrast to like everything else in the world, and like it feels like very otherworldly, very like hellish actually. So
yeah, as unwelcoming as Bree could look,
yeah,
that I would much rather be spending my time in Bree.
definitely.
Just real quick, I'll just say, I just love the imagery of it. It would have been really easy, to to kind of just, cop out and just do, a vision real quick, or just even just him vanishing, But I really liked that he added this kind of, it was just a lot of personality to the scene, and I just really liked it. And just kind of showed you just a little bit more of the threat, and this that you couldn't escape from it, basically. So I just love the imagery of it, like you said, just that horror feel to it.
Yeah, and the eye giving us, reinforcing again that, what the threat is. Not that we needed too much reinforcement, since we've just been spending time hiding from this very scary men in cloaks. But yeah, because of this, we have Frodo pulled aside forcibly to another room to chat with Strider, played by Viggo Mortensen, who basically gives him a very stern talking to about how it was stupid to do something like that, and how he needs to be more careful. And gosh, Viggo Mortensen as Strider, who we will come to know as Aragorn. No point in hiding it at this point, but goodness gracious, I think this was a good fit for the film. I really like Viggo Mortensen in this role, and he immediately comes across as incredibly competent and knowledgeable, and at first threatening,
Yeah.
But we're also about to get our first explanation as to what the Nazgûl actually are, coming from Aragorn, and it cements us to him as an ally immediately.
It was perfect casting. I think it's interesting that Nicolas Cage almost played him, which I just think is just like, I don't know. I would love to see that. I think that I wish there was a screen test or something, because I would just love to see that.
Yeah.
But Viggo
I
was just
have my sword,
oh,
my Nicolas Cage is not great. I give it. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna steal the ring.
Yeah.
But yeah, Viggo's is perfectly cast. He brings this kind of, like you said, this slight threat, but just he just carries himself, he just has presence. I think that's the word I'm looking for, is just the screen presence. His outfit is cool, it's just, he's everybody. Like, I could just imagine, obviously I saw it when I was way older, but I could imagine if you saw this movie as a kid, every boy would want to be him, I would think. If I had saw this when I was like a young kid, I would have been like, man, I want to be Aragorn. It's like,
that was definitely me.
He's an absolute role model.
Mhm.
He's
also another thing, his sword is so good.
Oof.
Yes.
The design is just, I love it.
And I'll say his swordsmanship is really good. I can't remember the guy who trained him, but he does training for all kinds of film actors and not just film actors, but just swordsmen in general. And he said that Viggo Mortensen is the best swordsman he's ever trained.
Wow.
High praise, and also really freaking cool. and and actually shows, because there's a bit of trivia later in the movie that I have to mention because it is fundamentally badass from Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. But speaking of, Viggo Mortensen explains that the Nazgûl are the 9 kings of men we saw in the intro, who were ensnared by Sauron having the One Ring, and they are now basically spirit, ghost, demon people. Neither living nor dead, but definitely able to kill you. And the clever editing of like Sam like sleeping and kind of like stirring in his sleep, and then the Nazgûl hovering over the beds with the swords, and then come to find out it's just pillows under there. You're like, oh God. Because it does look like, oh, they're about to be murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sequence, that whole sequence is so suspenseful, and like it really, like, if it didn't already sell you, like the Nazgûl are like really crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and the fact that they break into the village and just trample the gatekeeper, and like the image of them like holding their swords perfectly straight while they're filing past the innkeeper is just incredible. You know, and yes, fans, I know his name is Barlow Butterbur and he has a bigger role in the books, and I'm just picking on you. Go ahead and comment.
I can't help but notice that Byron's face is gone. Sorry, it made me laugh a second ago.
He's neither living nor dead. You know?
Exactly.
Oh.
He put on the ring.
Yeah.
Except for some reason his arms were still visible.
Yeah. Oh.
That would really suck if it didn't make your clothes invisible, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, those jokes aside, Aragorn takes the hobbits into the wild, and other than some really nice establishing shots and the meme of memes for all this, the second breakfast conversation. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about here. So I think, because we're kind of dragging on here, we need to get to Weathertop, which is where they camp out. It was the Watchtower of Amansul, as Aragorn points out, and again we get some more Peter Jackson horror when the Nazgûl find out that they're camping on this hilltop, and like, this is one of the most terrifying sets I think I've ever seen, because it's like intense blackness all around them, and they're in this, it's surreal. Actually, the lighting and the way the place looks reminds me a lot of the flare scene in 1917, because it's just like stonework illuminated by like a whitish kind of light, and then you have these hellishly scary figures approaching into the darkness, and the way that they're not in a hurry, like the way they slowly walk up one by one out of the shadows, surrounding them with their swords. Man, this scene is good.
It's an amazing scene, and I love that he put the horror elements into the film. I really enjoyed that, because it added a little something special, from all the other fantasy movies that we'd seen. And and it just helped further cement these guys as a huge threat, they're the kind of unrelenting force, and how that like you said, they're coming on slow, they don't need to hurry, that basically they know nothing that can really stop them. I mean, there was one character who could have stopped them, who was cut out of the film, but we won't talk about Tom Bombadil right now. So
the biggest travesty that we didn't get him.
It is.
Yeah, I think it was a wise decision not to go with Tom.
I'm leaving the chat right now. No, I'm just
yeah, my goodness, though, this scene is incredible, and I think maybe you were alluding to this scene, Drew, with the ring comment. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever Frodo puts the ring on in this scene and we see the faces of the Nazgûl, absolutely terrifying. Straight up nightmare fuel.
Just when you think they can't be any scarier, it's like, no, this was so much worse. Take it off.
You thought they were scary when they were just hooded demons. Well, now,
no, this is so much worse. and of course, Frodo gets stabbed, and Aragorn comes in and basically waves torches at them. but everybody, look, it's cheesy. We know it's cheesy, but gosh, when he throws the torch into the Nazgûl's face, like, this is the best thing ever. It's kind of a relic of the time that these were filmed in, because that is such a 90s action hero move. And yet every time it happens, you're just like, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect shot.
So
we
true.
give Legolas a lot of grief for, shield surfing and stuff, but that right there, throwing a torch perfectly into the vacant hood hole of a Nazgûl. That's something. And he didn't like spear it at him. He like flipped it into him. Like, geez.
Yeah.
End on end. Oh my goodness. And of course, with Frodo being stabbed, we are introduced to yet another character. Liv Tyler's Arwen comes out of nowhere to aid Frodo and his company. And also yet another instance of implied connections, implied history. We see that she clearly knows Aragorn and that they clearly like each other. So that's a neat thing, because we're going to be seeing a lot more of Arwen, and of course she is Aragorn's love interest. And I think it's no secret that Liv Tyler is not the best actress in the world. I think she does a pretty fine job with Arwen, so I'm not too critical of her, because she does the job. She does elf princess very well, I think. And of course we have that fantastic escape sequence of horseback chase with the Nazgûl and Arwen riding with a very, very sick Frodo. And we haven't really talked about it, but props to Elijah Wood for like 80% of his job in these movies is to appear very, very injured, tired, beaten, or starving. And he does a good job of it.
Yeah. He's probably had some experience before us.
Imagine the method acting it would take to play Frodo. You're just repeatedly stabbed and starving and being corrupted by it's basically like being a druggie with none of the money. The sequence where they race to the ford and we have Arwen confront them right there in the river, which is just another one of those cool iconic moments, because when the river does unleash and has the horses galloping, that shot holds up today, and it shouldn't. Like nothing about water horse CGI sounds like it could possibly hold up from 2001. And yet, like, of all the CGI, that's like the most flawless shot.
Yeah, water CGI is really hard to do, and to like make it look lifelike and stuff. And they did a good job,
If we have nothing there, we'll move straight on to Rivendell, which is a triumph of set design. Yes. and of course, we have Gandalf back into the story, telling Frodo how he escaped Saruman using eagles, using a moth, which when you say it out loud sounds incredibly stupid, but it's just cool, so you ride with it.
I just love when Gandalf jumps off the tower. He like belly flops off of it. Like he doesn't. He doesn't jump normal. He just like woo. You know.
Oh man. Also, like the way he's like doing the ASMR with the moth in his hands.
Yeah. ASMR.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And does like the Assassin's Creed dive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leap of faith.
It's funny because it's an eagle. So.
And then we immediately cut to that meme moment with Saruman.
Yes. That was one of the, like, I don't remember a lot about the marketing of these films, but I remember that shot in the trailers of Saruman with the moon in the background and like he's like turning, like that is a really cool shot. But yeah, the escape from Orthanc is pretty neat. Belly flop and all. And Rivendell is just jaw-droppingly gorgeous. It is the retirement home of Middle Earth, and you can see why. If retirement homes were actually good. But yeah, we have a reunion with Bilbo because Frodo wakes up and he is healed from his wounds by Elrond, played by Hugo Weaving. But I don't think this is the best opportunity to talk about him because we're going to get a lot more Hugo Weaving. We just kind of get him vaguely whispering stuff in Elvish over Frodo at the moment. So, I mean, it's not the first time because we did see him in the prologue, but again, not much of a character at that point. But Bilbo looking so much older at Rivendell, and again, that implied history, which is no longer implied because we have The Hobbit as a film franchise, and his retirement into Rivendell where he wanted to visit the Lonely Mountain again and stuff is just very nice reunion. Nice to see Bilbo again, even though if you're watching this movie and just this movie for the first time, you really don't know Bilbo very well, but gosh, it feels like you do.
Yeah.
So how do we feel our introduction to Rivendell is?
It was just, like you said, gorgeous. I mean, it just, the CGI, everything holds up. And, that was one thing I looked up real quick that, what amazes me is that, this movie came out in 2001, filmed in, between 1999 and 2000. And, and it cost 93 million to make back then. And so I did a quick inflation calculator because I wanted to see. And even like with the inflation amounts, like it's still less than 150 million today. So it's like, I mean, you look at everything they did and these jaw-droppingly gorgeous, environments they created for less than what most blockbusters are created for today, and it is incredible. And so I loved everything about Rivendell. I just thought it was awesome. It's like, it was another one of those things like the Shire is like, oh, I want to go there.
Yeah. Do we want to move straight into the Council of Elrond? I guess we should move into Elrond at this point. Played by Hugo Weaving. It's sort of, I mean, not bit role is not appropriate because he is present in all three of these films. But his role in Fellowship of the Ring is basically like facilitator. Essentially, the people of Middle Earth meet for a Zoom call, and Elrond is me, basically. So Elrond, Hugo Weaving, who it's kind of funny because at the time is already having portrayed Agent Smith in The Matrix. So his career is just ballooning at this point. And yet, like, I don't see, when I look at Elrond, I see Elrond. I don't see Agent Smith. Mm-hmm. And when I see Agent Smith, I don't see Elrond, I see Agent Smith, you know, which is weird because Hugo Weaving's voice, his mannerisms, they're unmistakable, you know, but somehow, despite both of these people, both of these characters being quintessentially Hugo Weaving, feel completely different. Or am I completely off base there?
Yeah, I would agree with that because, you know, he is very distinctive. He has a very distinctive face. He has a very distinctive voice. You know, the way he talks with his mouth and everything. It's just, I mean, we all talk with our mouths, but just the way the way he enunciates, you know, and stuff, you know, he's very much a character actor, you know, but like you said, though, it's like I don't know exactly what it is. But yeah, I don't see Agent Smith at all. Like, you know, when I'm seeing that character, you know, he just kind of seamlessly you know, just morphs right into that. I don't know if it's the hair or or what it is, but you know.
Yeah. And also, if we're upping the meme counter, we have the "I was there" Gandalf.
Yeah.
I was there 3,000 years ago.
Oh.
Which again, I feel bad not knowing, but I don't even know the actor's name who plays Isildur, but he does a very, like, I mimic his no all the time. Like his it's just a delicious denial. That guy is good at just saying no. Like, is that Isildur's only spoken line?
Yeah.
I think it is.
I think it is, yeah. Harry Sinclair was the actor.
Okay. Well, good job, Harry. Like that one no had a lot of weight to it because that is also a meme.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So Elrond having been there when the strength of men failed and Harry Sinclair deliciously said no to him. He kind of drunkenly stumbled past him. No, watch the scene. Like he literally he's like so into the ring, he's kind of like teetering as he walks past Elrond. You're just like, dude, you have lost all chill.
Yeah.
Which I guess is Elrond's point, but but we move into the Council of Elrond. The ring is now in Rivendell, but as Elrond told Gandalf, it can't stay there. It won't be safe there. It's got to go somewhere else. And if they're being honest with themselves, it's got to go to Mordor to be destroyed. Which the whole central conceit of this quest is that that's not only suicide, but like the last place you want to take the ring. Because it's not just that it's behind enemy lines that you have to go to. It's that if discovered, that's instant fail condition there for everyone. So we, instead of recapitulating all the prologue, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I think in another cut of the film, most of the prologue would have been done here. Which I agree. Is a bad place for it because it would have been nice to know a lot of that beforehand. And also, you don't want a 30-minute scene of exposition. So instead, what they did here is assume the audience and everybody at the meeting sort of knows the history and uses it for two things. One, to decide what to do with it. And two, to introduce a bunch of new characters that we're going to be following. So we have John Rhys-Davies as Gimli, we have Orlando Bloom as Legolas, and we have Sean Bean as Boromir of Gondor. Although Boromir was introduced in a short scene earlier, him arriving at Rivendell and Aragorn just reading, and Boromir is just kind of perusing and finds the shards of Narsil, and it's a very, very brief interaction. But I think he's given proper introduction here at the council because they're arguing over what to do, and Boromir is the one to immediately suggest, let's use it. You know, we have magic ring of power. We have very bad guy. It'd be nice to have a magic ring of power when fighting a very bad guy. But more importantly to me is that in his speech, he brings up his home, Gondor, and how they have been sacrificing big time just to keep not just themselves safe, but everyone else safe as well. Now, Sean Bean is a dead giveaway. You know where his character is going to end up if you have Sean Bean in the movie. Although we did reference a movie where he doesn't die earlier. It was National Treasure.
Yeah.
He just goes to prison there, but but my goodness, Sean Bean as Boromir might be my favorite performance in this film out of a plethora of fantastic performances.
I love Sean Bean. Like, I've been a big fan of him just, over the course of his career. And it is kind of funny because, like, I just going in, like you said, you know exactly what you're going to get, but this was just, I think, another case of good casting in the sense of that they picked an actor who kind of has a very particular swagger and very particular type of character he plays. But in this case, it just works perfectly for the character they're hiring him to be, and I think he just did a great job. He's, I don't know, almost the other, I don't know, he's almost kind of the other side of the coin to Aragorn a little bit, where Aragorn is kind of level-headed and cool, Boromir is hot-headed, so I think it's very interesting, and I just enjoy it. I thought he did a good job, and I also have to point out real quick before we go to Drew, that this whole council scene was again the set for another cultural video, which was the GIF versus GIF argument. I don't know if you guys have seen that one.
Yeah. And another meme counter moment. One does not simply walk into Mordor.
Yeah.
Maybe the most used meme of all time. And like, oh my goodness. But yeah, like I said, this introduces us not just to Boromir, but to Legolas and Gimli as well. Although, other than the fact that they're both, well, at least Gimli is kind of racist, and and Legolas is a bit of a kiss ass to Aragorn. No, but Legolas does come across as a more or less decent guy in this scene, and ultimately, this scene is to set up all this conflict and tension so that it can be broken by Elijah Wood's Frodo coming forth to accept this quest, which is a suicide mission to take the ring into Mordor. And the moment where he says, I will take it, and then has to say it again louder, and then everything goes quiet, and you have Gandalf's eyes closed, and like the fellowship starts to form immediately, where it's like, okay, this guy who is, in the grand scheme of things, no one, and is as ill-equipped as it is possible to be to do this thing, is stepping forward. And that is a tremendous act of bravery and courage that inspires Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and then, of course, our hidden Hobbit friends, Sam and Merry and Pippin, to volunteer to go on this long march into death. Is just a touching scene. Like, I love this scene.
Yeah, I love the way that they like set up this whole scene, and just the way that they introduce like each character. They say their name, who they are, um, and like this is where you learn what the the main plot of the whole trilogy is. It's about Frodo bringing the ring to Mordor. So like this is like kind of one of the, I'd say, like honestly probably the most important part of this film, is because you learn like what this adventure really is, and like you learn the stakes of like, oh, like if they don't like get there, if they don't destroy this ring, like the world's like gonna end. um and yeah, like I just love all the interactions with the characters. There's a classic like, and my axe, like where they're mentioning like all the weapons, and how like, oh yeah, like we're gonna go with you on this adventure, Frodo. Yeah, I just think it's a like a wonderful scene, and just the way they set it up is perfect. Um, and then there's the whole in the extended cut, there's the sequence where Gandalf starts speaking in I can't remember what it was called.
The Black Speech.
Yeah, the Black Speech. And like Elrond's like, yo, yo, why are you doing that here? We don't talk like that here. And he's like, well, you're gonna hear a lot more of that, like starting now, because like Mordor is like getting ready to essentially like just start invading Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So like I thought that was like a really neat way of like just kind of like showing how dire like the situation is, and how like some characters don't really like understand it. They don't really understand the stakes of like what's really happening. So yeah.
And that's it for now. If you were watching the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, this would be the point where there would be a disc change and we'd be going into the second half of the film. We've gone a long time here, and we do not want to cheat you out of any content or analysis for this film. So we're going to be splitting this Fellowship of the Ring into 2 parts. So join us next week for part 2. But before we go completely, I do know that Byron here has a podcast, and I'm sure Byron would like the opportunity to plug it.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, definitely. If you enjoy the sound of my voice and my witty repartee so far, you may enjoy my podcast. I'm on all the main platforms, Apple, Spotify, everything. You can find it in it's titled Under the Lens with Byron Lafayette. I do movie reviews. I have guests. Do breakdowns of different stuff. Do a lot of interviews with interesting people. So if you enjoy that sort of thing, feel free to come on over to that. And I also run a website, viralhair.com, that just does kind of the same, movie reviews, news, all that kind of stuff. So if you enjoy that, feel free to check that out as well.
Awesome. And also, if you do check out Under the Lens, if you like me, there's 2 episodes that I joined Byron for actually one thing we've already referenced in this episode, which is The Matrix Reloaded, and also Zack Snyder's Justice League trilogy. I joined Byron for discussions on 2 of those. So yeah, Under the Lens, good stuff. Having been on there, I know what the show's like, and having listened otherwise, it's good stuff. I think if you like Byron, you'll like it. And also, before we go, Pop Americana has a Facebook page and a discussion group. I recommend checking it out. It's young, but it's growing, and right now we have a daily trivia challenge, the Pop America Quiz, which is hosted by me. It's just for fun, but it's trivia, and in honor of February, which we're calling Love of the Rings because of Valentine's Day and Lord of the Rings. A lot of the trivia this month is Lord of the Rings related. So be sure to join us there, and you can also discuss films at your leisure, and we'd love to have you there. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and join us on Facebook. And join us next week for part 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring. Thank you.